Let's see if these microphones work. Are you guys hearing? You're hearing me, right? Are you guys hearing online? Please type yes in the chat if you can hear, because we're about to begin. Another yes?
Yeah, I can hear.
Awesome, awesome. So it's a wonderful day. I hope you all feel blessed. This meeting is officially called to order. And to do the invocation, let me invite our Assistant Secretary, Jamie Strong. Please stand for the prayer.
Let us pray. As we enjoy our fellowship with one another, may we grow in stature so that we are able to give more to our friends in Rotary, and in turn give strength to the ideas of Rotary and service to mankind. Let us all be thankful for the literacy endeavors of Rotary, for changing the world on one decoded alphabet at a time. Let us be thankful for our ability to read and commit to embracing literacy initiatives that provide the ability to change the world. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Assistant Secretary Jamie. Now we remain standing, and we'll have to have imaginary glasses because we don't have our refreshments yet. I believe our Chair of Wellness, Health and Wellness, Dr. Stevens, will be doing the loyal toast, and she is online. I'm hoping. All right, if she's not, then let me ask Director Yvonne to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. That's it. To the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. To the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, now I know we're not in our usual place of meeting, and we have lots of new faces here. The Rotarian spaces will be new to our visitors, and to our visitors, you're wondering who are these people. So I'll start with myself. I'm President Donna. We're really excited to have you here with us this evening. We usually meet at 7 a.m. in the morning. And when we say that, people go, what? Yes, there are some people who are early birds. They catch the best worms, and they get up every Thursday morning to join us for our Rotary meeting. And so to help us introduce ourselves and to interact with those persons online as well as in the room, let me invite our Chair of Literacy, Cynthia. Please give her a round of applause.
Evening, everybody. No, that's not good enough for me. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
That is good. That is much, much better. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have had a long day, a long week, a long month. So, I know why they're laughing. All right. So, what we're going to do today, because I need it, and I'm sure you guys may need it too. We are going to, for our icebreaker, share some
Powerful.
some love. All right? So y'all know what that means? We're going to say one thing that put a smile on our face today, or put a smile on our face sometime this week. All right? So we can feel the love and the joy in the room. Y'all agree with that?
Yes,
all right. So I'm going to start with our lovely Madam President. To my right.
Yes, so it started with a bit of sadness and then it became joyous. We had a member of our club who was in a bad accident, and we've been praying for him since Saturday. We started Sunday morning praying from 7 a.m. And then we prayed again at 7 p.m. and we've been praying at midday every day. And yesterday and today, his family reported that he's now breathing on his own, moving his legs, trying to move his arms. He's awake and breathing. He's alive. Yeah. And so he came from literally being critical and almost dead, like really scary, to now showing signs that prayers do. And I am just feeling joyous.
Yes, Madam Secretary. Tell us one thing that put a smile on your face today, man. Come on, let's go. Okay. Our little Rotarians, y'all want to say anything? Yes. What were you happy for today?
I'm happy that I have life and I'm happy that I just come to this.
Oh, she's happy to have life and that she can come to Rotary meeting. I love that. Hi, Travis.
I'm happy that I will be a Rotarian.
I'm happy that I will be a Rotarian. He's a prophet. Hi, President Francis.
This is a happy moment, right?
Yes, very happy.
I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, awesome. Our guest, Miss Money. Mrs. Money.
I'm happy to ride, and I'm happy that I got to buy this baby.
Amen.
Hi everybody, good evening. I was going to say President Donnet, so my answer, but I'm really happy because the Baldo is moving on his own.
Oh,
That's my answer.
yes.
So we're sharing.
How old is he? Awesome. That is awesome. And the lovely lady in the green olive shirt.
My name is Sister Rose, and I'm happy because I have more boys than girls. One of the members get their membership card this week.
Awesome.
So yesterday I thought to myself, this is very nice.
Awesome.
So you work every
At Capital Library.
Awesome. Nice. Giselle.
Hi, I'm Giselle Carter. I'm happy one that I was actually able to make it out to fellowship with you guys this afternoon. I'm able to leave work on time. I'm also happy that it's payday. I'm happy for life, health, and strength.
Awesome.
Moving on, Miss Paula.
My name is Dorcas Tola, and I'm happy for life. I'm also happy to have so many Rotarians sunrise and on this with the staff here at the Rotary Library.
Wonderful birthday, National Public Library. I am happy to be alive and to be alive.
Oh, thank you. Yes, directly to Carol.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy that my daughters were able to fare well during after just Hurricane Fiona. They are in Nova Scotia, they're on the western side, and thanks be to God, they still have power and we have not much traffic, so.
Oh, yes. You know what I had to go through to get today? That makes two of us.
Let's go.
I am happy to know that Jesus still loves me.
Amen. And last but not least,
I'm happy today. An awesome day. And I'm very happy to be here to sit among Rotarians.
awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing the love and the joy.
Thank you so much, Chair Cipio. I'm not seeing my secretary to, so that he can do the welcome. Is he online?
No.
All right. So let me invite Director and Lane handling the ceremony. Just to do the welcome first, please.
Well, a pleasant good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Rotary Club. Welcome, fellow Rotarians and guests. We have some guests online. If we do have guests online and Rotarians, you have your guests, can you please open up and introduce them. We want everyone to feel welcome. We have a whole lot of love and warmth in this room, and we want everyone to feel welcome, welcome, welcome. So, do we have visitors here? You can open up your mic, introduce yourself, and you can just say who invited you. Do we have any more? Do we have any visitors? No, I see we have our okay, Maud. We have Maud and Jeanette.
Community, Long Island Community Library, invited by Mrs. Bowler.
Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Maud.
Good evening. My name is Maud Evans from the Carmichael Public Library. I was invited by Mrs. Bowler.
Nice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have Chair.
Cynthia, please introduce your guest.
Yes, please introduce your guest.
Everyone, I am so happy to introduce Mrs. Janet Munnings. This is her
Fifth.
fifth meeting with us, and she's also visited the Lieutenant School during the reading program. So she's a pro.
All right.
We're gonna make sure.
Well, welcome, 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 everybody. We have a whole lot in store for you. And so just sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Akeisha. I know I can lay hands on you suddenly. So this month is for Rotary all around the world. It's Literacy Month. And what that means is that we put the spotlight on literacy, whether it's from very early, very young. I've learned from personal experience and from observation that children can start speaking from their 7 and 8 months. And we're also focusing on adult education, which is why we're here. So we've done a lot for the babies. My dear chair has a 2-year-old, almost 3, who is already reading, knows alphabet, from he was 1 year old, he could identify all the letters of the alphabet. He's really, really smart. And what that tells me is that when you start really early, and stimulate your kids from their babies, from they're in the womb, then it manifests in the level of performance when they come out of the womb. We're now focusing on adult education, and that's why we're here today. And we know the literacy rate in the Bahamas is 96%, which is phenomenal. And so it means that the majority of persons understand basic math, English, they can function. You can go to the airport, fill out your forms, and we're way better than most of the Caribbean countries. So I want you to give all the librarians to give yourselves a round of applause. With competition gadgets, computers, cell phones, you have to still motivate people to touch these books in these libraries. And that's an awesome task, given how things have changed. So this afternoon, we're here to impart some knowledge to to adults. And of course, it will be done in the form of a panel. So I'm going to invite Director Akeisha to come forward again, and she's going to introduce the panel, and then we'll go straight into the panel discussion. I hope everyone online is hearing clearly, and that you will learn a lot from today's session. So over to you, Director.
Okay. All right, so I'm back, and I guess I'm going to be back all night or all evening. So first up, we have Miss Mara Evans. She's going to come and speak to us about financial literacy. And Tamara Evans is a financial services professional with over 28 years of experience. She is a certified financial planner and is Series 7 qualified. Tamara joined the Rotary Club of Nassau Sunrise in October 2021 and is currently serving as the Family of Rotary chairperson. She is married to Shervin Evans, And they have 3 children, Alea Shoshana, Ariel Tamar, and Shervin Ethan. Please welcome Tamara Evans.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I love libraries. I homeschooled my 2 daughters in 2011 and 12. And the first thing we did was we went to the South Beach Library. They got their cards, and then I took them to the Elizabeth State Library there, and they got their cards, and we visited. We read books together, and it was a wonderful experience for them. I have a son, he is autistic, and so I know the importance of having him to read and getting him to love reading. The devices, like it was said before, pulls them away from the physical books, but he's doing the Abeka program at his school, so he has to do a lot of reading. And it's very helpful in his speech and language, and it gets him to connect words and communicate with others the best way he can. So I can appreciate libraries and reading. Tonight, or this evening, I'm here to talk to you briefly about savings and some investing. And it will be more personal and in stories, because I know when we hear stories and people's personal experiences, we tend to remember a lot more. So savings really is the portion of your income not spent on your current expenditure. So let's say payday is today, you got paid $10,000, and your expenses, immediate expenses total about 3,000. You're thinking about how I'm going to work this other 7,000. I'm just going to park that on the side and save that. And so that is what we call savings. You're not using it immediately. It can be used in maybe a week from now, a month from now, however that may be. And we use different types of products to park this money in. It could be a savings account at a local bank. It could be a money market account at a local investment firm. Or it could be one of those types of savings at a credit union. Or it could be Mama Lulu's ASU. You know, we just park that money somewhere for future use. And what I find is that a lot of us don't have that extra room when it comes to receiving income and saving a portion of it for future use. And I think the COVID crisis kind of exposed where we are as it relates to our savings. Hey, it has been said that a small percentage of Bahamians have more than $1,000 in their bank account at any given moment. So it means that we don't have a culture, or we did not have a culture of savings. I'm hoping that because of COVID and many of us being out of work or not being able to earn an income has or is shifting our mindset as it relates to what are we going to do with money when we get it, and how we want to make this money work for us. So there are different types of savings products. Like I said, it can be a savings account at a local bank. It can be a money market or a mutual fund account at an investment firm. And it just depends on what you're thinking about using this money for. You have identified now out of your salary that a portion of this is going to help me in the future. How is that going to help me? What are the goals? What is it related to? Maybe it's related to funding your child's school fee in the next 3 months or so. Perhaps it relates to you getting a down payment for a home, which is a little longer term. Maybe you have 2 years out to plan on getting a home. How I'm going to save towards that down payment. Perhaps it's to fund your child's education abroad in university, and your child may be 21 months like your nephew, was it, for 3 years? Okay, I have maybe 15 plus years out. How am I going to save towards that educational plan? And these are things we need to think about early. We don't wait until it comes upon us to do that. My husband and I have 2 children in university. And so outside of their tuition, there are other expenses. There are these, what I call ad hoc, that really is not budgeted.
but we have to attend to. And so when you're looking at savings, first you need to know, why am I saving? What's the purpose? What am I doing it for? And once you've identified that purpose, then you match that purpose to a product. So everybody is saying, because of COVID and crisis situations, you need to have at least 6 months of your salary saved in an account that you can access quickly and use for emergency purposes. All of a sudden you need to fly someone out because they have an issue with health, or your home, perhaps if you're in COVID, 3 6 months, you're not getting an income and the bank is calling you for a mortgage payment. This is what we call an emergency fund. And everyone should be thinking about, and it sounds like a lot of money, but if you start to save a little over time, it accumulates and it's there. But it has to be accessible almost on demand. So you're gonna look at, where am I gonna put this money, this 6 months worth of money? It has to be the short-term vehicle. Perhaps, like I said, a savings account or a mutual fund account with an investment firm. And we know that there are many investment firms out here now offering these types of short-term vehicles that you can park your money in, earn an income of interest on it, and then use it for that use. And I'm connected to an investment firm. We can talk about that later. I'm not here to talk about my firm. I'm here to give you some points, and I can give you some of those. But also, too, there are term deposits at the bank. Many of you know about that. You can put your money on a term deposit for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, or over, and then you can have that, what we call compounding in interest. And if you need it, you can break that term deposit. If you break it before maturity, they may penalize you, but at least it's access to funds that you've been saving that you can use immediately for whatever your needs may be.
It happened by.
And then they have longer term investment. We may have a longer term investment goal, like I said, the educational plan for a child. We want to put monies aside early to deal with their college education. Well, many financial institutions have what they call educational plans or college plans that you can start with minimal amounts, $25, $50 a month, and you put that every month without touching it until it's time for your child to start. And it's compounding interest. You know, you put it there and you kind of forget it. Because if you have access to it, and most of them lock you in, you can't even access it before a certain time, you know, we gonna find a way to slip and slide. We have an issue with being committed to our long-term goals when it comes to saving. And that gets us in problems, because now you have a child who is bright, talented, and has been accepted and probably has a partial scholarship, but you're not ready to assist them. And it's heartbreaking sometimes when you're not able to. So if you plan ahead, you're able to plug into that and secure their financial needs for their college education. So it's important to think about, why am I saving? What's available to me to put this money in? And when can I access it? And what type of interest I'm going to be earning? Now, years ago, you used to get interest on savings accounts. I don't know any bank now that is giving you interest on a regular savings account. And if you get a term deposit, you're earning, and you leave that when you say 1,000 to 10,000, if you get 1%, that's plenty, and that has to be on for at least a year. So a lot more people are looking at investment products to help them earn more interest or income on their money, getting a better return, but being able to access it when they need it. And that's where a mutual fund comes in. Like an ASU, we all put our monies together in an ASU. When it's your draw, if you need a redemption, the ASU holder pays you out, and everybody else stays in. And it goes on like and on until a mutual fund is similar in that we all pool our resources It has a professional money manager. That professional money manager then looks at the pool, let's say it's $10,000, and then based on whatever strategy they want to earn high return, they put it in a more riskier type of investment. If they want to earn a lesser return, they put it in a safer investment like government bonds. The government of the Bahamas offers government bonds. You can take as little as $100 and go to the central bank and purchase your bonds, and the rates are above 5%. And you can turn them in if you need money. You can go to the central bank and turn that in and get monies back. A lot of people don't know that. Investment houses offer that same type of thing. So they may offer you a bond fund where they invest in various type of bonds with different returns. And then you, instead of going to the bank and getting a term deposit yielding you less than 2%, you can buy a mutual fund or a bond fund and yield up to 3, 4, 5%, depending on what they're investing in. So it's you have to do your research. You have to go and see what's available out there for you and see how best you can maximize your return depending on your risk. We call it risk profile. Some of us can take risk. You may have extra funds that we can put in stocks. You know, we have Commonwealth Bank. They're a publicly traded company. They trade shares, ownership in their company. You can go to a local brokerage house and you can ask, what's the price for these Commonwealth Bank shares? What's the cost for me purchasing it? How much dividends do they pay? How much do they pay you back? And how often do they pay a certain amount of their call it, pay back their, sorry, at a blank, but they pay out of their, help me. God, yes, where they pay the dividend, yes. I wanted to say they paid out of their the monies that they earn above and beyond their surplus. They paid out of that. And they give you a dividend every quarter. But you keep the principal amount that you put in unless you sell your shares. Now there's a trick to selling shares. You buy your shares at $3, you don't want to sell them for $3 or $2. You want to sell them, hopefully, if you're not in a bind, when the price is higher, or you want to hold them for your children. And what we have is a lot of people buying and holding for their children and grandchildren, so they can have something in the future. So it's so many products out there. You just need to get out this mindset that I only need to put my money in the bank, in a savings account. When you think about retirement, you have to plan for retirement as well. Where you're going to put your money? You know, if you're 30 years out from retirement, you know, you don't want to just keep your money in a savings account. You want that money compounding and working for you. So by the time you retire, you have above and beyond what you need. Just don't depend on national insurance. And if you don't have a pension plan with the company that you work for, you need to think about getting an individual pension plan outside of national insurance. Okay, if you don't have one, even if you have one with the company you work for, some companies match you up to 5%, some match up to 7.5%, some match up to 10%. In a pension plan that my company has for my benefit, we match up to a certain amount, but we also can put above and beyond what they match, and it goes into a voluntary pension plan, which you can access if you need it, but you get to put that away without thinking about that. And if an emergency comes, then that voluntary, not the amount that you put in and matching that extra and above beyond, you may want to access it for an emergency. So there are a lot of products and tools out there that you can think about when it comes to savings and investing. And this is the time now to do it. You know, COVID should have wakened all of us up to the importance of putting something aside every single payday, whatever people say 5 to 10%. If you can't do that, whatever you can. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be of a help and a benefit to you and your family if something goes awry, Lord forbid. So that's my short presentation to you. I want to make others available. Thank you so much. Anyone online or in the room? Okay, thank you so much. And if you see me step out, I have to go to my son. I have to help him homework and do mommy duty. Thank you so much. And for the online, thank you.
All right, thank you so very much to Tamara. What an awesome presentation and just so informative. Has us thinking. You gotta think and save. So our next speaker is going to be PP Francis Dean. She's the founder and president and managing director of Dean and Associates Professional Insurance Agents and Brokers Company Limited. She's responsible for the daily management and operation of the company. Francis has over 40 years of experience in the insurance industry, and she has earned many awards, including the LIMRA Leadership Institute Fellow degree, and currently she's pursuing the Chartered Insurance designation at the Insurance Institute of London. She joined the Rotary Club of New Providence, June 2012, and later transferred to the best little club slash greatest club in the galaxy, the Rotary Club of Nassau Seminars. Francis has served in a number of positions in the club, the most recent as president of the club. Rotary gives her an opportunity to serve others, especially the very young and the elderly. And Francis believes that through Rotary, she can assist and with bringing the necessary changes to help improve some social conditions in the country. I present to you PP Francis.
Good evening, fellow Rotarians in the room and online, and all of our guests. Good evening to all. So I've been asked to speak on the importance of life insurance and why we need it. Life insurance is a contract between two parties, the insurance company and the policyholder. The insurance company promises to pay a sum specified in the policy upon the death of the policyholder. The policyholder's only obligation is to pay the agreed premiums as set out in the policy. People buy life insurance for many reasons. It provides financial protection for the family after the death of the breadwinner. It is used as security for mortgage commitments and is required by financial institutions to secure mortgage loans in the event of the death of the mortgagee, the mortgagor, before the loan is fully paid. Some policies accumulate cash values, which can provide a retirement fund when the insured retires. Life insurance is also used to cover those final expenses left as a result of the death of the insured. There are four main types of insurance. Of course, there are many others, but these are the four main types attached to one of these four. Whole life is a permanent life insurance plan that accumulates guaranteed cash value savings and is referred to as ordinary life insurance. This policy matures at age 100, at which time the cash value equals the face amount and is paid to the insured. If the insured dies before attaining age 100, the proceeds will be paid to the beneficiary. Premiums remain level and should be paid in accordance with the contractual terms. The cash savings may also be used in the event of an emergency. Then borrowing from your life insurance savings, it is very important that the loan is repaid. Outstanding loans reduces the amount of the beneficiary receives. Term life is another one. This is the type of policy that is paid for a specified period. However, it does not accumulate any cash savings. It can be converted to a permanent plan anytime during the term period. Conversion premium will be charged according to the insured's current age. So if you bought a term life insurance at age 25, thinking that at age 40, you are going to convert into a permanent plan. If you couldn't afford it at age 25, you definitely will not be able to afford it at age 40. Which could conversion premium will be charged according to the insured's current age, which could be very expensive depending on the age of the insured at the time that they applied for conversion. Term insurance is usually purchased to secure mortgage commitments or business loans. The uncertainty of purchasing term insurance to provide financial security for the family after the death of the sole breadwinner is not recommended, as the insured may outlive the insurance policy or may not be healthy to qualify to purchase another when that happens. Another one is the endowment policy. This is also a type of insurance policy that is paid for a specified period. However, at maturity, the face amount is equal to the cash value, which is paid to the insured or the policy owner when it matures. Endowment policies can be used for retirement as well as educational purposes. This type of policy is very expensive when purchased at a more mature age. Some persons purchase it, many people, as a matter of fact, years gone by, bought endowment policies for their newborn babies to give a sum or to help with educational fund when that child reaches the age of 18. There are so many other vehicles now that can be used for that purpose. The same will apply for someone of a younger age buying endowment policy for retirement. Persons will buy endowment policies to assist with other means that they may have, such as savings in the bank, to help them to continue to live the standard, maintain the standard of living that they had while they were being fully employed. So you can do it through the insurance. You can, Mara mentioned the NIV pension, of course, not guaranteed. So we need to put aside our own and create our own fund for the purpose of retirement. And then there's universal life. This type of life insurance policy also offers long-term protection to the insured. It builds cash value. However, the cost of the insurance increases as the insured gets older. And so as you get older, you're thinking, well, I'm paying for a savings aspect and I'm paying for the life insurance, and then sometimes people say it's too expensive or they are unable to pay, and understanding that you have this twofold benefit available to you, they cut off the extra that they've been putting in that policy to help with the cash value. That's the wrong time to do that. What happens is the insurance company then uses a portion of your cash savings to keep the policy, the life insurance policy, on the books or in force. And so that is where your universal life policy gets more expensive. As you get older, people begin to wonder, well, why is my cash value, why doesn't it look as good as it looked before when I was older? Okay, and some people go in and they borrow this money, they don't pay it back. Wrong thing to do. Please, if you have a life insurance policy, particularly a universal life, and you use cash from it, pay it back. Lastly, life insurance is an investment which purchased at an early age provides peace of mind during life's uncertain times. A young person purchasing life insurance does not pose the same risk as an older person. Young people can buy life insurance in some cases, depending on the amount of life insurance. They don't have to even do a medical. An older person, regardless of how much insurance you are buying, you have to do a medical. All right? So premiums are lower for younger people. Cash value growth is slower, however, it's steady. And you won't begin, as a young person, you won't begin to see that cash value in the early years of the policy, but certainly as the policy grows older, you begin to see your savings accumulated. So make an investment because life insurance, when the insured retires, is profitable, especially at retirement. You're no longer productively working, and so you're not getting that weekly or monthly paycheck, and insurance comes in good use at that time. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You have said what I wanted to know. I retire next month, right? Now, my concern is hearing you right. What happens now to government workers, like money comes out directly from school? That's how it is, right? And so now, what happens to someone like me when they retire? First coming, do I go to the insurance company and transfer it?
Well, now may be a good time for you to speak to your insurance agent. You have your contract. Can you find that? You know which company you are insured with, right? Well, if you go and you give them your name, they have your records right there, and they're able to look at what you have saved and give you some advice as to what to do. At age 65, you may not be able to afford that premium anymore because of the lack of consistent income. And so you might want to cash it in, take your cash, and do a number of things with the cash. Okay. All right. Okay, so approach your insurance company, and I'm sure they'll give you the advice that you need. Somebody else had a question? Mm-hmm. 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 So why would you want to reduce the face amount of the life insurance if you've paid it all those years? Sorry? Well, I wouldn't recommend that you reduce the face amount of your policy. Then you borrow funds from the insurance company on against your cash value. They don't tell you how much to pay back. All right, and so you can pay it back anytime at any amount that you may wish to. Unlike the bank tells you how much to pay every month. The insurance company does not do that. So when you go and you make these payments, you pay in for your life insurance and you let them know this is for my loan. Because if you don't, then that's a whole nother story. Okay. So make sure that you tell them what the funds are for so that they will know where to place those funds. Okay? But think about it. If you reach this stage in life, you've always had the $200,000, I would keep that. I would suggest that you go in or speak with your agent and see what they would recommend for you. Two other persons had a question.
My hand is up, my hand is up. With the universal insurance, right? Borrowing from the insurance. What does the interest looks like?
On a universal life plan,
Yes, ma'am.
again, like any other insurance, if you take it out at a later age, you don't really see that savings growth as you would like to see. A younger person, say 25, 26, purchasing a life insurance policy, yes, you will see the growth. It looks good. It is something that you can continue on until retirement. And of course, it can be used for your retirement benefit. Now, not too many companies sell universal life in the Bahamas.
No, that was years ago. That was years ago. I was
All right.
in the universal. Okay, and I borrowed some money from there. But they never say to me that you have to pay $100 and you have to pay $20. No, as I can pay, they accept that.
Right. That's exactly what could happen. Yes. The onus on you to see that it's paid.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, let me take this question over here, please. Well, as I just indicated, 25, 30, before you reach the age of 30. Now, a young professional, a doctor, a lawyer coming out of college, that's the first thing that I recommend that they do, buy life insurance. Because young professionals, they've been in college all of those years and they've lost out on those years that they could have been making money and paying life insurance, investing in life insurance. Okay, so as soon as you're able to do that, do it. Someone else had a question? Sorry?
Are you from an insurance company?
I own an insurance brokerage. Yes.
Oh, okay. Now, I've listened to you very, very attentively, and all to be purchased by these insurance companies. Everything that everything that you own. I went into insurance company at an early age, so I listened to all that you said, and still yet I was given the short end of the stick. A person who has never claimed, and I say thank God, never claimed on our insurance. Just come to show, I really got the short end of the stick. And I'm wondering now, is it best to put your money in an insurance company or in the lady who spoke before you, stocks and bonds?
Well, that's a whole another story. Because in this economy, stocks, bonds, any kind of shares, the returns are minimal. all right? And until the economy changes, I would recommend that anybody invests in, because I have someone when I don't remember and I get a check. Serious? Okay.
Again, even but her being not here, even with the bank, you put your, let's say you have your savings in the bank, you don't get anything.
No, you don't. You don't get it.
So I'm
You don't
wondering,
get
should I
it
go
any
back to
interest.
my grandma's time and put mine in under the
Don't worry, you are not the only one who are thinking that way. But unfortunately, you know, even though the banks don't pay us anything, we know the money is there and we can get it anytime. What you say? Okay. Any other questions? One last question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Where do the cash values go along with your like the life insurance?
Where do they go?
Yeah. Say if I don't get if I don't pay for cash.
No, the cash value is a portion. Remember, you take out $100,000 life insurance. In my program, in my presentation, I said earlier, if you live to see, let's say it's a whole life policy, you live to see age 100, your cash value then is equal to the face amount of the policy, and then the insurance company will pay you the face amount of the policy if you're still alive. Of course, if you are deceased, well, then your beneficiary will be collecting that money.
So that I would like to take my cash out and just leave them.
No. That is the cash value is a portion of the face insurance. You can't get that without affecting the face. Okay? Okay, thank you, ladies. Transit on let's stand right here.
On behalf of the Rotary Club of Nassau Sunrise, our visitors and guests, we are so grateful for all that you would have shared with us today. And we, it's no token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very informative. And at this time, I'm going to bring our third panelist to you. Her name is Ms. Giselle Cargill. And Giselle is a partner at the Lennox Patent Litigation Group. Her practice focuses on commercial and general litigation claims, including contracts, banking, insolvency, fraud, personal injury, professional negligence, employment, and family law. Giselle has appeared as junior counsel in the Supreme Court and Court of the Appeals in the Bahamas, and Giselle helped to obtain a ruling that clarified the long-standing confusion over the concurrent jurisdictions between the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal when applying for leave to appeal to the Court of Appeal in the Bahamas. She's here today to speak to us on commercial disputes and family law. Ms. Giselle.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. PP Francis is a very difficult act to follow, but I will try my best. I just prepared some brief talking points. I thought it best to keep my presentation to the general areas of just general litigation to give you some idea of how you would go about commencing litigation, whether it's through an attorney or not. And then also, because family law is such a broad area, not to bring down the mood in the room, I thought best to just comment on divorce proceedings. And prior to that, just touch a little bit on the availability of prenups and postnups. So hopefully you would find this to be informative. So just speaking about general litigation, the first thing that you would identify before commencing any litigation, whether it's in magistrate's court or in the Supreme Court, is, what is the wrong that you're seeking to have the court remedy, essentially, and what is it that you're looking to recover? So we term that as identifying your cause of action, right? So whether it's in a contractual dispute, you entered into an agreement with someone and the other party did not comply with whatever the terms of that agreement was, and now you're seeking to either require them to comply or you're seeking to recover some loss that you experienced as a result of their non-compliance, which we would refer to as your damages, right? So depending on the amount that you're looking to recover, you may decide to commence proceedings in the magistrate's court or in the Supreme Court. I primarily practice in the Supreme Court, so I'm not too familiar with magistrate's court procedure, but magistrate's court is very friendly to laypersons, right? It allows an individual without sometimes the use of an attorney to approach the court and allow you to make representations on your own behalf. Now, you can also do that in the Supreme Court, but I'll speak about why I would always recommend that you engage an attorney if you're going to the Supreme Court. But in magistrate's court, if you have a dispute with someone and you're seeking to recover some damages or, well, damages that's less than $5,000, or you're seeking to have somebody evicted from, say, you own rental property and that person no longer pays rent and you want to have them removed, you can then approach the magistrate's court. Oftentimes you can find just by approaching the clerk's office at the magistrate's court, they would have these summons forms that you can often fill out yourself, and you can just identify, oftentimes we use a police officer to serve that document on the other party with whom you have this dispute with. And once the court assigns you a date, you personally, if you are unable to afford an attorney, or if you feel confident enough to articulate your issues to the court without having to have the use of an attorney, which a lot of people are doing more so these days, you can appear before the magistrate's court and explain your issues to the magistrate. And the reason why I find that laypersons find it more easier to navigate through magistrate's court is particularly because the rules of court are not so stringent, right? There aren't often specific rules and procedures that you have to know as a layperson that would prevent you from being able to approach the magistrate's court. Now, when you're looking at trying to recover, again, we're still in this contractual kind of scenario, right? So you're looking to try to recover some damages that exceeds $5,000. Say, somebody either damaged property that you owned and the damage is assessed at $20,000, $25,000. Now you're in the Supreme Court arena, right? Now, the rules of the Supreme Court are a bit more tricky because the Supreme Court is very rule heavy. It's very procedural heavy. And that's why I said at the beginning that I would always recommend that a person who has a claim that has to be brought in the Supreme Court, that they engage an attorney who is familiar with these processes. That can save you a lot of time and headache. I've been in matters with, we refer to them as pro se litigants, meaning individuals who represent themselves. I've been in matters with those individuals in the Supreme Court, and you're often clouded by, you're emotionally tied to this thing, right? So you have a personal connection to this issue that you're fighting for, and all you want to do is just make sure that the court hear what you have to say. But oftentimes you're faced with so many procedural roadblocks because you don't know how to navigate how to properly get your matter before the court. So you find that it's frustrating and you come away with the impression that, the court just didn't give me my day in court to express the issues that I wanted to put before the court, but the court isn't going to allow you, the Supreme Court isn't going to allow you to just appear and then begin talking. So that's not going to happen, right? And also, I just to backtrack a little bit in referencing the magistrate's court. Magistrate's court, the availability or access to magistrate's court is also much cheaper than it is accessing the Supreme Court. I think the cost of filing a summons maybe $2.50 or $1.50 or somewhere along those lines, whereas to commence an action in the Supreme Court, for instance, it's oftentimes the filing fee that you pay is dependent on the sum that you're claiming. But the minimum sum that you'd be paying is $350. And that's a one-time fee, right? You would pay that fee to commence your action one time. Now, your lawyer's fees are another story, right? So, and again, with the Supreme Court actions, oftentimes I'm often approached and persons would say, well, can you just take your fees at the end once I recover this money, you can just deduct your money from the sums I recover. This is not the United States, right? And I say that because we have specific legislation that prevents us from doing that. We do not work on a contingency basis, right? You pay as you go. Yes. And it can become very costly. So I often advise my clients to really identify what it is that you're seeking to recover here. And at the end of the day, will you pay more money trying to recover that than you will ultimately recover at the end of the day? That it's not worth it. You may be able to use another avenue to get that outcome, perhaps try to engage in some kind of settlement discussion, perhaps some kind of mediation, even though these days, mediation and arbitration can often be just as expensive as court proceedings, unfortunately. But depending on the amount that you're looking to recover or the item that you're looking to recover, you may have to weigh up, is it worth it at the end of the day, particularly if you're going to the Supreme Court. Now, again, if you're in the magistrate's court, it's your time. If you have the time, you can be back and forth as much as you would like. So that's just a general overview of the two different systems that I'm most familiar with. Just to touch a little bit on family law. Like I mentioned, I chose to focus specifically on divorce proceedings, again, not to bring down the mood. But it's always good to go into these unions with an open view, right, of what could possibly happen. Now, with respect to, or in referring to potentially entering into what's called a prenuptial agreement before you enter into marriage, we often hear that term a lot. Watching television, or when you see there are high-profile celebrity breakups, you would hear about, what does the prenup provide for? Now, in the Bahamas, prenuptial agreements aren't necessarily strictly enforced here, right? Because ultimately, the court can look at that agreement and say, I don't have to follow this. There are defined provisions in our matrimonial legislation that itemizes what the court should look at in trying to distribute whatever assets that the family had, right? The husband and wife had. However, if you have a prenuptial agreement where both parties, before entering into that prenuptial agreement, got independent advice from two independent lawyers, they were competently sound when they entered into this agreement. The agreement properly provides fairly for the distribution of the assets between the husband and wife. It sufficiently provides for the taking care of the children if there are any children in the marriage. The court will be very more likely to go along with that agreement as opposed to just chucking it to the side. But you have to make sure that you have those components, right? You have to make sure that the independent advice, that it fairly distributes the assets, and that it properly provides for the children, right? And in those instances, then the court, would be less likely to say, oh, we're just going to wholly disregard the terms that these two parties have agreed on. They would be more likely to look at those terms and see how best, they can work that into any final order that's made. And the same applies for a post-nuptial agreement. And a post-nuptial agreement is simply that. It's an agreement that you entered into after marrying, right? So it doesn't always have to come on the front end. It's after you two may have entered into this union, you may decide, okay, we both came here with these things. Some things we've joined together, some things we wanted to keep separately. Let's see if we can work out some terms, not planning for a demise, but just being prepared, right? So this is how, if in the unlikely circumstance that, you know, this marriage comes to an end, this is how we would want our assets to be divided and how the children are to be taken care of. And again, the same rules apply. The court doesn't have to follow it, but oftentimes the court will look at it as a guide. I'm also going to touch on just briefly, I don't think we need to go through or address the grounds of divorce. I think for the most part, a lot of people are familiar on what basis you're able to approach the court to get a divorce in this country. So I would just touch briefly on, you know, a hot button issue, which is more so the sharing of your assets, right? Now you're in the process, you're in that divorce stage, you've already gotten that decree nisi, which is just the first step, right? So now you have to go through all of your individual assets, your joint assets, and see how it's to be shared. Generally, the court starts from a position of equal sharing. That is the view that the court has taken by and large. However, that's not necessarily what the statute provides for, right? All that the statute provides is for the court to exercise its powers to place both parties so far as they can in a position, in a financial position that they would have been in had the marriage not come to an end. That doesn't necessarily mean equality, right? It may mean that had the marriage not come to an end, one of the spouses would have been entitled or still enjoying certain, I guess, I don't want to call it luxury, but still enjoying certain amenities from the marriage, right? But that doesn't mean that those amenities amounted to 50% of the assets. Those amenities may have amounted to 20% of the assets. It may have amounted to 30% of the assets. So you would start at the court looking at, okay, we're going to split everything 50-50. Both of you need to then convince the court either this is equitable, we're going to keep it at 50-50, or no, I'm entitled to 80% of whatever these assets are, and this other party is only entitled to 20%, and here's why. So oftentimes you would look at who did what in the marriage, right? And you know, there's this misconception. I think we're moving away from it more so now. There's this misconception that, you know, if one of the spouses, oftentimes it's the husband. If the husband is the party who purchased the home, the husband is the party who works, you know, he contributes to the majority of the bills or all of the bills, and the wife stays at home, you know, takes care of the children, then the wife isn't entitled really to anything because she hasn't contributed financially to purchasing anything. That's not accurate at all. Contribution is not just in money, right? Contribution is also in kind. So the wife would have cleaned the house or hired somebody to clean the house and manage that person in the cleaning of the house. You don't have to do the cleaning yourself. You can just manage the household. And managing the household takes on a variety of, you know, different forms. You hired the gardener, right? You had to make sure the gas company comes and put in the gas tanks, fill in the gas tanks, right? You made arrangements for the dry cleaning to be picked up, right? You picked up the children from school. You may not have helped them with their homework, you may have, or you hired a tutor for that to be done. You managed the household, right? So your contribution has a monetary value that could be affixed to it. And the same is for a husband. If the husband was the one who was in the home doing all of these things, and the wife was the breadwinner, essentially, a monetary value can be applied to what contributions the husband was making. He may have been the one who was the handyman of the house, who was upkeeping the house, mowing the lawn. All of those have values, right? And the court would take that into account when you get into who contributed what and what are these two people entitled to when they walk away. And that's oftentimes a big deal when you come to looking at the matrimonial home. If that home is just in the name of just one party, that party oftentimes like to assert, well, this is my house. You know, it's just my name that's on this. This person didn't contribute any money to purchase this house, so they shouldn't be entitled to anything of it. And I've never been in a situation where the court has found that to be the case. Oftentimes, either the court would, like I said, affix a value to the contributions that the wife did make or the husband did make, which were in-kind contributions, and require the owner of that house or the person whose name that house is in to either pay out that other party the percentage value of whatever their interest was, or you could sell the home and you would split it that way. And then, in unsummary proceedings, of course, you always have to provide for the children, right? Either you make the decision, either you and your spouse can come to some arrangements yourself, or the court will make those arrangements for you. And I always encourage my clients, it's always best and easiest if you can work those out yourself between the two of you, as opposed to having a judge then say, okay, you couldn't come to the decision, this is what y'all are doing. You pay this amount every month, you're gonna pay for X, Y, and Z, and now you feel like you're getting the short end of the stick because the court told you, these are all the things that you have to pay for. And oftentimes, the party, the spouse who makes the most of the income, the majority of the income, if the court's gonna decide it, you're going to be paying dental for those kids, you're going to be paying the insurance for those kids, you're gonna be paying the lion's share of school fees for those kids, you're going to be paying the lion's share of extracurricular activities for those kids because you can afford it. You may feel like, well, I'm getting shafted, but the court's paramount concern is the welfare of the children. And the children always have to be taken care of above, the two adult parties in the situation. So really, those are just some brief points that I wanted to touch on with you guys. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah, so you are required to maintain the children until the age of majority, which is 18, right? But oftentimes provisions are made between the parties. Again, you two came to an agreement that this maintenance would continue through tertiary education. It's often good to include those in the agreements because you don't want the child graduating from high school and now you're like, well, who's paying for college? You've already worked that out. That's in a court order that says that you're going to contribute X amount to the child's tertiary education. So you can include that in whatever agreement that you two or whatever order the court ultimately makes. Include that.
It's not a question. You did it's a compliment. You did a very, very good job.
Thank you.
You did a very good. One of the things that you were saying, you did a very, very good job at explaining it.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure being here with all of you. Yes, sure. Denise sounds like she's trying to hide some stuff. So it depends, right? I would recommend that you put your assets into a trust prior to getting married, right? If you get married and then you go off and hoard some assets into a trust, the court will likely, go behind that trust, right? And also, even when you put assets into a trust prior to marriage, it can still be sticky. For instance, let's say your matrimonial home is in a trust, right? And that home was in a trust before you two got married. But now this home is a family asset, right? And let me explain what a family asset is. Anything can become a family asset if it's used for the benefit of the family. If you have a boat, you have that boat beforehand, but you use that boat to take your family fishing every other week. Y'all did summer vacations on this boat. The family benefited from this boat. That's a family asset and that's available for sharing, right? And that goes for any asset that you have. If you're using the proceeds from that asset for the benefit of the family, that asset then falls into the pool of family assets that's available for sharing. So that matrimonial home that's in a trust, the wife lives in that matrimonial home, has been contributing in kind, maybe not money, but has been contributing in kind. The husband is the ultimate beneficiary of that house. So ultimately, the husband owns that house, even though he doesn't own it outright, it's owned by the trust, he's the beneficiary of the trust. That house may still be available for sharing. So the answer really is, it depends on the asset, how you're using the asset. I would always recommend, if it's going to be a trust, it could be a discretionary trust, which is a trust where the person is not an automatic beneficiary, meaning It's not a given that you are going to inherit the asset that's in the trust. It's at the discretion of the trustee. So in that instance, the court may say, well, this isn't an absolute benefit of his as yet, so I can't necessarily, distribute this between you because there's no guarantee he's going to get that. But even in those instances, depending on the asset, again, if it's a matrimonial home, that's particularly tricky. But if it's going to be a trust, it can't be a trust that traces directly back to you, right? You're the only beneficiary of the trust. Clearly, you're entitled to these assets, and you've been using the proceeds from these assets to maintain your family. So the argument becomes more difficult for you to separate this away. Now, if it's a trust that you're in with other people, siblings, your parents are beneficiaries, you don't own that asset outright. So you may be able to make the argument then. But if it's just you, I would deconstruct that trust. Sorry?
You came into the marriage with a child. So you want to set up, and you want a house. So now you want to set it up to where if something happens to you, or y'all get a divorce, the house really belongs to your child that you brought into the marriage.
And you've been using this house for the matrimonial home?
Yes.
That's an interesting one, right? If something happens to you in terms of, if you pass away,
right?
I would suggest you have a will.
Even if you get a divorce.
Right. So if you get a divorce, this house is in your sole name, and you've been using this house as the matrimonial home. The child is a minor, so you can't put the house in the child's name because they can't hold property as a minor. In that instance, you can set up a trust and have the child as the beneficiary of the trust. And the argument would be then that, you're not the owner of this home and it was always under, but I would also recommend that this is something that's known to your spouse, right? And if you can put something in writing with your spouse that he agrees that this house is in a trust and the beneficiary of this trust is, your child, this particular child, so that, if there is a divorce, you would have this document where the husband acknowledges that this house was always the child, supposed to go for the benefit of the child or supposed to be inherited by the child. But I would also recommend a will. If the house is solely owned in your name, I would recommend a will. Now, even with a will, right, if you used this house as the matrimonial home and no provision is made for the surviving spouse to receive any type of maintenance of any kind, say you have a will and you gave everything away to your child, left absolutely nothing to your spouse can still make an application to the court for some type of maintenance of some kind from your estate. And that would be more difficult because you would have a will, but an application can still be made to the court because they weren't provided for. Any more questions? We're good? Oh, there was a question.
What if something was inherited, like, what if something was inherited, like a piece of land property?
Whether it's available for sharing in your divorce? Oftentimes, inheritance is not. Now, again, like I said, anything can become a family asset if you use it for the benefit of the family, right? So you inherited a timeshare. Your family takes vacations there every year. You rent it out in the meantime and you use that money to maintain the family. The other spouse has access to it. Keep in mind what I said initially, the court's role is to put both parties in a position as if the marriage had not dissolved. Had the marriage not dissolved, would your wife or would your husband have had access to this thing? Yes, they would have. So should they rightfully share in it? It's arguable. It depends on how you use the thing. I would always say don't use everything for the benefit of the family. Essentially. So there's especially those assets that you had prior to entering into the marriage. If the intention is to keep them separate, keep them separate. And I would also close with saying, if you had an asset that you own solely, property, mainly property, and you get married and you add another party's name to that asset, only you purchased this asset, this was property, vacant land somewhere. you get married, you convey, half of that interest to the other party, or you add their name to a mortgage. The intention is, or the perception would be that the intention was you were supposed to share that 50-50. Regardless if that person contributed or not, once you've added them, the perception is that it was always the intention for him now to share, or her to share in that 50-50. So if that's not the intention, I know everybody wants to be, and again, not to bring it down, right? But everybody wants to be good spirited and well intentioned and a good spouse, but you also have to be smart. So I would leave it at that. Thank you.
On the behalf of the Rotary Club of Nassau Sunrise, thank you for coming and Miss Connie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much once again, Ms. Cargill, and fellow Rotarians and guests. Wow, we have learned so much. And our final speaker is going to do the last leg of the race for us. Wow, I learned so much moments ago. Yeah, I mean, I heard it before, but anyway. So, last but not least, President Donna Cartwright is going to come to us, and she's going to present. She received her law degree from the University of Technology in Jamaica with first-class honors and a legal education certificate with the Eugene Beach Law School. She came to the practice of law after nearly a quarter of a century in the insurance industry, witnessing how much of a difference it made to the ease of clients' results when their affairs were in order and they were prepared, not just with coverage, but within a legal framework. She has been helping people with estate planning for over 3 decades. Born in Jamaica, Mrs. Cartwright rose to the top of her insurance field as a vice president of sales. In 2012, she transferred her skills to the Bahamian market, but also realized a growing passion for the field of law. In the Bahamas, she completed the legal education. She started in Jamaica, and she is the president of the Rotary Club of Nassau Sunrise. Ms. Cartwright, who, in addition to being a member of the Jamaica Bar, holds a MBA in finance from Manchester Business School in the UK and a certificate in international arbitration from the Miami Law School. She is a chartered financial advisor and a member of the Caribbean Institute of Arbitrators and Bahamas chapter. Welcome, Madam President.
So I get to wear another hat this afternoon and to follow those very tough speakers who had you so enraptured, captivated, and I hope I'll be able to do the same. Now, for Rotarians who are online, and the Rotarians are accustomed to the meeting lasting for exactly 1 hour, we're craving your indulgence this afternoon because this is more than a meeting. This is actually a project, and we're teaching and creating learning experiences for adults. It is a lot to speak about in such a short time, estate planning and wills. And so I want to start by saying, everyone in here have an estate. A lot of times people think, I don't have an estate. What do I need to plan? But if you think about it, you do have an estate. If you have a cell phone, if you have a piece of jewelry on your neck, if you have a watch on your hand, if you have a car outside, if you have a home to go to that you own, then you do have an estate. And what you do with your estate is very important. So I came to law after nearly 30 years in the insurance business because I noticed that there were people who maybe just did not like insurance. And my lovely friend here says, it's like throwing good money after bad money. So you thought you made a mistake all your life investing in an insurance policy, and you should really just buy some stocks. So estate planning is really sitting down and looking at your affairs and determining what you need. It's a basket of products that you need to plan your entire life and your well-being and that of your family. So it starts with your savings, then it goes to insurance. And I just want to say one thing about insurance. If you had an ATM machine and every day you could go to that ATM machine and just put in the figure that you want and money comes out, would you insure the machine? If you own that ATM machine at RBC, Cable Beach, and it gave you money every day, any amount of cash you needed, would you insure it? And I'm sure everybody would say yes. But you're that money machine. You're generating monies for your family every day. And so you would need to insure yourself. So that's all I'll say on insurance. But what led me to law was that there were people who would either not buy insurance, not recognizing that after you die, your family will need cash for different reasons. If you owed money, a mortgage, loan, your car loan, all of those become due upon your death. And so you have to plan, not just with one tool, but all the various tools that are available to you. So you need cash, you need insurance, and you need estate planning tools. And what are those? So apart from what all the other speakers spoke about, you also need a will, or you may need a trust, depending on what you want to achieve within your estate. It's a lot to cover, and so what I'm going to do is skip over quite a bit, and I'm going to go into what is a valid will, because in my practice, and not just practice of law, but my experience from the days of insurance, a lot of people didn't know what a valid will looks like. They think they have a will. I recall one day going to a client, and it was an insurance related client. And he said he had a will. I'm checking to make sure all his affairs are in order. And he says, yes, I have a will. And I said, would you mind if I take a look at it? And he went to his filing cabinet, took out his will. And when I looked at it, the will was not valid. So he's like, I thought this was, yeah. So people try to make their own wills at home. And sometimes the will is not valid for various reasons. We usually suggest that you get professional help, professional advice when you're doing especially more complex things. But if it's a very simple will, you should be able to write your will at home. So what I want you to be able to do tonight, if you don't have money to pay lawyers, after you leave here tonight, I want you to be able to draft your will. I'm not going to ask how many people have a will, because that's the most embarrassing question I've ever asked anywhere. Whenever I have gatherings and you ask how many people in the room have a will, very few people put up their hands. They feel if you write a will, you're going to die tomorrow. You're not going to die if you write a will. So I'm trying to make something that she talked about, making the room cool down or chilling the room. This is the worst topic that you get at 7:45, 7:30 in the evening, but it is part of life. We are all appointed once to die. So just see it as something that, well, I just need to get accustomed to thinking about it. So estate planning can be sexy, yes. You are going to plan your affairs in such a way that when you pass on, your family and everything is in order. I have seen orderly estates, and I've seen those that are not properly structured, either by will or by trust, and people, they literally lose everything, right? Sometimes you'd be like, how come so-and-so had so much money, but like the kids are suffering, or so-and-so, they had no proper estate planning. All right, so I think, I'm not sure if I have enough for everyone in the room, but I'm going to share what a will look like. So what is a valid will? So the law actually determined how there's actually a Wills Act, and the Bahamas has one. So I had to pull my Wills Act because every country has their own Will Act. Now, if you can go online and look for it, you'll see what it looks like. And the first thing I want you to turn to when you find that Wills Act is the section 4, which says, what is a valid will? So first of all, the person must be 18 and over, and you must be of sound disposing mind, meaning that you must be in your right mind. Your faculties have to be together. So if you are, and even if you say somebody is insane, it's not a medical question, it's not a legal question, right? Are they able to do they have lucid moments when they think, because sometimes you have people who are crazy, but with medication, they're cool and they can make decisions. You have people who are functional alcoholics, they drink. As a matter of fact, they function better when they have a little drink. So those persons, someone could argue, no, he's always drunk, he could not have made that will. he may have made that will when he was at sound mind and he was sober at the time and understood what he was getting into. Now, the actual will itself, and I could tell you so many stories, heartbreaking stories that I've seen since I'm in the Bahamas, where people have wills that are not valid wills. They have them at home and it's just a piece of paper. It's really not a valid will. So the will has to be written a certain way and it has to be what we call executed in a certain way. So first of all, your will, after you've written the will, it must be signed at the end. You can sign somewhere else too if the person is blind, and I'll get into those. But it must be signed by the testator. So the person who's making the will is called the testator. It must be signed by that person, and it must be witnessed by two persons in the room at the same time seeing you sign. So they don't have to see the contents of your will. They could just be told, well, this is my will, and they don't have to see what's in it, except that if you're a beneficiary of the will, you should not be witnessing. So you may want to make sure you can crack a little joke with the person and say, am I in the will? And if they say no, then go ahead and witness. Because if you're a beneficiary and you witness the will is invalid. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing, if you don't have the two witnesses present at the same time, seeing the testator sign, so if three of you need to be in a room and you see him sign, and then each of you notice each other witnessing the will. So that has to happen in that way. It can't be that Miss Mary comes and witnesses and she says, all right, see you, Mr. Joe, and then Miss Brown comes in and she comes and witnesses. That's not valid. Both have to see you sign at the same time. All right, that's very important. And the reason why I'm raising that, I've seen wills where they go to a JP and they draft the will and take it to the JP, and the JP witness and notarize it. That's not a bad. Yes, it looks good on paper to see it notarized, but no, it has to have two witnesses signing at the same time. And the person must acknowledge that it's their signature. Now, if the person is blind, for example, and someone is going to come and help them, they could actually ask someone to sign on their behalf in the presence of the two witnesses, so another person would be in the room observing that. Or the two persons could have him watch him make that mark, and it could be a mark, an X, a line, some kind of representation of the person's signature, and once they do that properly. However, if the person is illiterate or blind, then you need to go a little further. You need to make sure that the will is read to the person. So recently I got a will that was drafted. In fact, it was drafted by an attorney, and the attorney read the will in the presence of two witnesses, and it was executed properly. The testator had a will 2 years prior, and that will had a different person as the executor. And that executor was trying to probate that will and ignore the second will, right? And like, oh no, he did another will. When did he do that? But yes, that happens. You could write a will with one lawyer, and then at your death, they discover that there's another will somewhere else. So the fact that you have a will doesn't mean that that is the last will. People change their wills all the time. As a matter of fact, if you get married, then you need to do a new will, because that invalidates the previous will. Once you get married, the will you had before you were married is no longer valid. All right, so don't see it as something morbid and I don't want to do it. I just gave you a piece of paper and I want you to look at it because it gives the structure of what your will should look like. If you are online, I apologize for not being able to share my screen, but I'll have copies available or I'll send it by email. All right, so the first thing you wanted, and it's actually in the Wills Act. So when you go home, you'll be able to write your own will. Like I said, if you write your own will and then have a lawyer look over it, it may be much cheaper than if you have them draft the entire will, because we bill you based on time spent, right, Giselle? So if you know, and if it's a simple will and you write it at home, and the will is executed like I just told you, then your will is valid. And that will is better than not having a will. And that will can be propounded for probate. You can go to the court and have that will probated. And I'm going to tell you what happens if you don't have a will, so that you're encouraged when you leave here tonight to go and write your own will. They can be typed on a computer, or you can write it with your handwriting, so it can be properly read, of course, that we can make out what you're saying and who you're giving what to. But once everything, all the elements are there, your will be valid. So the first thing you have to say that the will is being made by me, so and so, and you put your address, and you can put the date that you're making the will. The first thing you want to do is revoke any wills that you had in the past, because if you don't, then it means that all the wills will have to be probated together. And so if you are confusing, like things change, and it may create some circumstances of suspicion, like why is the will so confusing? Why, sometimes people change their mind. I'm going to take you out of my will because you didn't come to dinner when I invited you, and so you change your will next week. People change their minds all the time. I saw a skit recently. I think it's Latoya, that Bahamian comedian, where the mother said, "Are you coming over?" And she says, "Mommy, I'm busy, man." And she said, "Okay." And she called another day, "Are you coming over to see me?" "Mommy, I'm busy, man. I can't." So when, of course, the day of the will reading came, it says nothing for so and so, nothing for so and so, because on many occasions when I called you over to help me, you did not show up. So people put all kinds of things in their will. All right, then you have to appoint an executor, someone to look over your estate. This person walks in your shoe. That person takes over as if they're you, and they execute whatever it is you have in the will. And then the third part is that you give whatever. So you don't have to make a very detailed inventory, but have an idea of the things of value and who you want to give them to. Although if you didn't, it doesn't mean that your will is not valid, because sometimes you may have things in the will and you later sell them, or you have a piece of jewelry and it's in the will but you have lost it, then it simply means that that gift will fail. So they'll just cross off those and say, okay, this no longer exists, this car was sold, but they'll look through your list and see what is still there and who you want it to get. So you want to list that, and then after you've given everything, you may have some things that you want to, if you didn't capture everything, you may say, okay, the residuary or whatever is left over, I want X person. And it could be either a church, it could be a Rotary Club, it could be Red Cross, it could be, because Rotarians do that too. They leave stuff for Rotary in the will, and that's how we're able to do so much good around the world. People actually leave stuff for Rotary in their wills. And then once you've listed all of that, you date and you sign in the presence of two witnesses. So if you're going to make your will, you take it to work, you type it up on your computer, you say, okay, Miss Fowler and Miss Brown, come with me, and you take them into a room and you execute your will. And you can actually do that in the comfort of your home at work. Now, if your will is more complex, then I encourage that you seek independent legal advice, or if you have a family member, don't be running like, oh, my daughter can do my will. That my parents asked me to do their will, I tell them, no, you have to go and get independent legal advice, because I can't, it may seem to my siblings that I have, overboard your will. I'm a lawyer and they have told you what to do. And so to keep arm's length of that, I'll send them to other people. So don't say, oh, I have a cousin, or try and keep it away from family members and get independent legal advice. And so complex wills would be people who have multiple assets and assets in other countries. And, if you have trust and you want to create trust within the will, and you want secret trust, you want discretionary trust, you can do so much with your will. There are things that you don't put in your will. For example, if you own a house with you and your husband, that doesn't go in your will. So I've seen that where people leave their house for the daughter, and when you get the conveyance, it's owned by jointly between them and their husband. You can't will it. The right of survivorship, your husband gets that house automatically. So you have to will things that are solely owned by you, just yours alone. You can't will the matrimonial home, and you can't will something that you own along with a brother or a sister. Also, if you have an insurance policy and you have a named beneficiary, you don't put that in your will. So there are some things that don't go into the will. But outside of that, if it's really simple that you just have specific assets and you own them by yourself, it's good to put that in the will. And then some people may say, well, if I don't have anything, why do I need a will? And I've seen instances where maybe there was a wrongful death, maybe there was an accidental death and the money coming to your estate by way of litigation. So you could have your family suing either an insurance company or the driver of the vehicle or the owner of a vehicle or police who shot you accidentally, or you never know. And then there's no estate, there's nothing left in your estate, there's nothing left for any of your beneficiaries. So you could say, whatever I own while I'm alive, I'd like it to go to my children in whatever portion. So you could do a will that is just very general, but once it's executed the way I just told you with the two witnesses, then that will be valid. All right, and so I just want to close with, if you do not have a will, what happens if you do not have a will? Then the government makes one for you. Statute makes a will for you. So there's the Inheritance Act, and it says that if you died and you did not have a will, then everything is shared 50-50. So if you have a spouse, 50% to your spouse and 50% to the children equally. So I had a lady who was married and the man had 13 children. So can you imagine, 50% goes to the spouse, but 50% is shared among 13 people. That's hardly anything. So you want to make sure you have a will, because he never wanted his wife to benefit from that particular asset. Outside of the matrimonial home, which of course the wife can appropriate, meaning she can buy out the children if there are children that are not of the marriage, because sometimes you're in a second marriage situation, there are other children that are not your children, and they're beneficiaries as well, because the state says that they have to benefit from your will. So you want to make sure that you list what you want to happen, not just it being shared arbitrarily. So if there's no spouse and everything goes to the children equally, if there are no children, then it's your parents, and it goes all the way down to cousins and aunts and uncles and so on, if none of those persons are alive. So avoid chaos, avoid worry and problems in the family. There's people fighting over your things after you have gone. Write what you want to happen after you die. And so hopefully with that little guide, you'll be able to write your will. And if you need a lawyer to look it over, find someone who's not a relative who can look it over. And if it's okay, then you go ahead and execute your will. So I hope you learned something, and I hope that if you did not have a will, that after tonight, you will write your will. All right, thank you so much.
Question.
Oh, questions.
Would my will be valid? I go to the card, only need a copy.
Would I
will be valid? I just go to work, just go to us. Witness at the time, is it allowed?
No. So the question is, if she went to Giselle, and just the two of them in the room, if the will is valid, the answer is no. So you need two witnesses witnessing your signature while it's signed, and they see each other. So the will be set up with a line for you to sign, and then a line for each of the witnesses to sign. And it's good to put the witness's name, address, phone number, as much information as possible, because when we're ready to probate, we have to have an affidavit from them to say, yes, I was there, and I saw when what's your name?
Roxbury.
Miss Roxbury. I saw when Miss Roxbury put her signature, and this was the will. I didn't see the contents. I don't know what it was, but she told me it was her will, and we wrote, yes, that is my signature.
So it is then. It is also invalid. I go to Bola tomorrow. I have the will written up. I give it to Bola. Check it out. And it's signed by me.
No, you need two witnesses.
So you need two?
Yeah, so you need two. So you would have to call Miss Bola and somebody else, two people at the same time.
It just cost me now to have to go and dig up my will.
Yeah, so if you have a will and it only has one person witnesses, and I've seen wills with just a JP witnessing it, that is not a valid will. So if you have a will, please pull it out. Or if you got married since you made your will, please pull it out. Now, if you have done a will and because of what I've said tonight, you realize I need to add something or do something. You don't actually have to make another will, especially if you had used the lawyer and it's a proper will, but you now have another piece of asset that you own by yourself. You may do what we call a codicil. So it's an appendix to the will that adds the additional stuff. And in that will, you could take out what's your that no longer exists in
And
the
that
will.
also must be witnessed by.
And that has to be executed in the same manner your original will was. So two persons present at the same time in the room with you, seeing you. If the person is blind or illiterate, like I said, you have to go further, read the will, make sure the person understands, and that is it. That's what they want. I could get into deathbed wills, but I don't want to get into those. Time will not permit, but sometimes people wait until they're on their deathbed and it's the nurse and the doctor, and then it creates problems because the family will say no, but that person was visiting at the time and we may have told him what to write, and so do your will when everything is fine and you're in good health and you have nothing to worry about. Yeah, question?
Yeah. So if the will is invalid, because the council, family council, so does that mean that the court decides on the person concept instead of
Yes, yes. So the question is, if the will is invalid and if you brought it to the lawyer and they see that it's one signature, they'll be able to assess whether or not it's valid. But there are instances where the court needs to decide whether a will is valid. So the case I mentioned earlier, where there's a will that is done, the person is blind, but there was a will where they were not blind. And in some cases, if the clause is not there, there's testation clause to say that this will was read over to me and I understand the contents of it. One of the witnesses may have to attest to whether or not that happened. And we try to put the clause in at the time we're writing the will so that you don't have, because then the witnesses could have passed before the testator. Because the witnesses could have died and they may not be there. So sometimes we actually do the affidavit to say that they were there together and saw you sign. So that if your witnesses died before you, then that would have addressed that issue. Or they could have died simultaneously. Like we've had plane crash with whole families going down and they may have witnessed each other's will. All right, so wills is a very big topic. I don't think I could do justice in 15 minutes because there are mutual wills. There are all kinds of different kinds of scenarios and we don't have time to go into all of that, but I wanted you to be able to go home and write a simple will following the structure that I gave you on that handout. All right, any other questions? I'm sorry? A codicil, C-O-D-I-C-I-L. So a codicil is like an appendix to your will. It may correct certain things. So you have a car, you spend how much money with a lawyer to write this will, and you want to make some changes to the will, then instead of, or some additions to the will, rather than go and start the will all over and pay again to draft the will, then you could draft a simpler document, just adding that to the will. All right, any questions online?
Yes.
Yes, there is one question. Rotarian Gwen.
Go ahead.
So if I made a will before I got married, and then once I married, you're saying that the will that I made is now invalid because my marriage certificate takes precedence, yes?
Your marriage takes precedence.
So if I die, then because that will is no longer valid, whatever assets I own is now shared between my husband and children?
Yes, 50-50.
Okay, understood.
So the idea is that when you're making your will, you must be of disposing mind. It means that you must know who are your beneficiaries and how you want to distribute the assets. So if you're now married, before you were married, you never considered your husband. right? Because you weren't married. So now that he's in the picture, you have to consider it. And that leads me to another important point. Let's say you have a child and this is a wayward child and you don't want him to have any of the money in the asset. You can't just leave him out of the will. Actually, it's not advisable. You want to give the court or you want to give the probate registry or the judge or whoever is looking over your probate documents the impression that you did consider the person, but it is your will not to leave anything. So what I usually recommend, leave $1, leave $10, leave something so that they see that you did consider the person. Because he could contest the will and says, no, mommy would not have left me out, and it becomes a big row in court when really and truly you deliberately did not want to give that particular child anything. So we write them into the will, but we leave a nominal figure for them. All right, so when you go home and you're making that will, you have somebody that you know, let's say it's your husband, and you don't want him, apart from the matrimonial home, you don't want him to get your lot over in Cat Island. You could put him in the will for $10. He gets he gets to keep the matrimonial home because that doesn't pass through the will, but he only gets $10, so he can't get the Cat Island home. All right, so make sure that you're considering those things when you're drafting. All right, so all of you should be able to write your will, right? When you go home this evening, you should be able to type up something on the computer, right? Just follow the form that I gave you. You can use the exact words that are on it as well. It's not hard. I mean, actually, so in Jamaica, and maybe that's something the library could look at as a project. In Jamaica, you can go into any pharmacy and buy a will form. So what they do, all you're doing is filling out. See like how I have it there on the form? So you just fill in your name, the date, and you just use the same list and list the stuff, right? And then you come to the bottom and so they actually have the form already drafted like a will, and all you're doing is filling out stuff. And once you execute it in the way I said, 2 witnesses present at the same time, that will is valid. So a lot of people don't really go to lawyers to make their will unless they're business people and they have complex estates with properties in multinational properties in different parts of the world, and it's very complex. But if it's a simple will, a lot of people just get a will form from Times Store or a pharmacy and they draft up their will right there at home.
I'm sorry. Persons on need to see the forms, so
oh.
they can be shared or posted.
Okay, so if the form, if you go to the Wills Act, there's a first schedule. There is a form that looks like this, and it's in the first schedule of the Wills Act. So if you go online and pull down the wills, I just created this one, but if you go online and you bring up the Wills Act, you'll see the exact same thing. But I'll email it to, if you put your email address, if you're not Rotarian, then you can put your email address. If you're a Rotarian, I already have your email address. I'll send the form to you. Yeah. So I can add on to this. Yes, so right. So this is just showing you the question. Then the person says, in our joint, signed by so and so, as my last one, in our joint present. So the 2 witnesses would sign it. They would need 2 more lines.
Yeah, I guess yeah.
So you could actually, if I send this to you in Word, you could actually just finish the sentences and have 2 witnesses. Yeah. So I'll get your email addresses from Ms. Fowler, and I could send a free kind of a structure for you to use, and you create your will. I saved you maybe about 2,500. Thank you very much, everyone.
I said the lawyers will take all my money.
All right, that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. I get these hugs every Thursday morning. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks everyone. All right, so with that said, I think yes.
Now, I'm sure you all agree with me that the presentations tonight were awesome. Weren't they? Yes, the presenters were awesome, weren't they? Thank you, thank you, thank you to each and every one of our speakers. And a huge thank you to Mrs. Fowler for having us and to the National Library and Information Services for partnering with us on Project Adult Ed. The first installment, because I'm sure there are going to be many, many more. There has to be. This was truly awesome. This is awesome. We truly appreciate you all for allowing us to partner on this project. And I'm sure you'll all agree that a wealth of knowledge was shared here tonight. That golden nuggets were shared here tonight for us to take with us and to utilize in our everyday lives. At RCNS, it is our hope that projects like these will help to combat adult illiteracy in our community. We hope to target all aspects of illiteracy in the Bahamas, and we cannot do it alone. We need each and every one of you. And so again, I say thank you. And again, I look forward to the future projects that are sure to come.
All right, thank you. So I put on my other hat and we're going to wrap up this meeting. Thank you so much, Chair Cethia and Director Akeisha for leading the proceedings. Oh, Ms. Fowler, could you come forward, please?
I was gonna ask this question. You didn't tell me, or this audience. Oh. How we can become a part of the Rotary.
How you can become part of Rotary? Oh, nice. Okay, so I'm going to send you the short answer. Go to rotary.org so you can learn more about it because, yeah, there's a lot more than just meeting, right? We do projects. We're part of the International Service Organization, started in 1905, and membership is by invitation. But when we come to community projects like these and person says, I want to join, that's also a very good sign because it means that we've inspired you. Okay. And so if we've inspired you, then we ask you to come visit us at our meetings, not just the ones that we bring to you, but come to our meetings, whether online or in person. And once you've attended a few meetings and you really like us, we're not just pretending to be nice tonight, you really, really like us, then you submit an application form, it goes to our board, we canvass our members, and then you become a member. So we'll go through the financial obligations that you make when you join, because we have dues, we have annual dues. But it's a wonderful organization, and we're looking for more hands to do good around the world. So
you're not discriminatory.
No, we're not discriminatory.
That's right.
All right, so Ms. Bowler, on behalf of the Literacy Committee, the Rotary Club of Nassau Sunrise, I want to thank you because this project could not have happened without you. And so we thank you, we thank you, we thank you. And it was really fun. We need to do more. Thank you. All right, so give me time, please. We're going to terminate the meeting. And I will now invite Rotarian and Ishka to come and do the four-way test. So we're governed by the four-way test. And this is something that you would memorize when you become Rotarians. She's going to lead us through it now. She's our newest baby. So our new Rotarian is going to lead us in the four-way test. Four-way test.
Of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second, is it fair to all concerned?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you. All right, and the final toast to round off tonight's meeting will be done by Director Kendrick Dames. I think Director Kendrick is online. Is he still online? All right, if he's not online anymore, then I would ask Rotarian Rashando to do the final toast. The Rotary around the world. Rotary around the world. All right, thank you. Good night. There are some treats and we have light refreshments. Please enjoy. And of course, we're here to answer any more questions that you may have about it. Thank you so much for your participation this evening. For those who stayed with us, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Awesome meeting, President Donette. Please send
Yes.
me an email of that document, please.
I will email it to everyone, and I look for the addresses in the chat and email it to those who are not Rotarians. Thank you.
Also,
Congratulations.
The appendix is a A. I couldn't understand the appendix, that A word you use, that lawyer term.
The codicil?
No, it started with A. The appendix, like if you want to add something to your will.
Yes, and you use a document called a codicil, CODICIL.
Auxiliary? Is that what you're looking for?
CODICIL, codicil. That's what you use to amend your will.
Madam President, congratulations. That was a fantastic meeting.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, guys, take care.
Madam
Bye-bye.
President,
Good night.
Good night. Be good.